Hello and welcome to the News Corp Grand Final AFL preview video. I'm Sam Landsberger, joined first of all by Reece Homfray, who is live at the Gabba. Reece, how is it out there?
G'day, Sam. Good, mate. Anticipation certainly building, but they won't let me in. They tell me I'm about 24 hours early, but waiting for the Tigers to have their final training run, only a captain's run, not expecting anything major to happen this afternoon, but looking forward to being back here this time tomorrow. It'll all be happening.
You're like those hardcore fans that jump in the wheelie bins and try and get wheeled in overnight for a free ticket. Nick Wade also here, I think in the Brisbane hotel room. Nick, you've been all over the Cats for a long time. How excited are you?
Yeah, no, look, I am. Thanks, Sam. It's exciting. I'm a Geelong guy, so we're pretty lucky to be up here watching the Cats. But, no, it's going to be a massive day on Saturday, and just looking forward to it coming around. And we've got a night time to wait for it, so the anticipation's going to build all day.
Well, that's, I think, where we start tomorrow night. It is a 6:30 p.m. local game, but there are storms forecast, so we think it might be a bit of a wet and wild grand final. Nick, we'll start with you. What do you reckon? How does the weather guys play in? You spoke to Justin Lepich on Thursday morning. What would a storm do to this grand final?
Well, I think it absolutely plays into Richmond's hands. I mean, like, they are a team that loves the ball in motion. They love it on the ground. They're a territory team. That's exactly what happens when it rains. So, by contrast, Geelong is a possession-based team. They love to control the footy, hit a target, move the ball methodically, and you don't want to overpossess when it comes to the rain. But I'm sure Geelong will have plans for that. But I don't know about you guys, but I reckon the rain suits Richmond's game plan to a T. We saw it last week, Reece. You were over in Adelaide, and you saw the Tigers in full flight against Port.
Yeah, and it was wet, that's for sure. I don't think anyone expected a dry grand final when they come out. Even if it's not raining, it's going to be a wet, dewy, sort of sticky, slippery ball. So, certainly the Tigers had no worries handling the conditions in Adelaide last week. Should set them up nicely for a tilt here tomorrow. But my main concern with the weather is the report about possible lightning. They have to call the game off or put it on hold. What will that do for our deadline newspaper? We're going to be in all sorts, aren't we?
Oh, gee, we need a plan.
When you said that. Now, what about the preparation? Reece, you're obviously at the Gabba. The Tigers are about to have a training run there, but the Cats are doing it a little bit differently. They're staying in the Gold Coast.
Yeah, interesting, wasn't it? And from what I understand, the Cats had their captain's run this morning. No dramas, got through, and they basically declared their hand that they're going to go in unchanged from their preliminary final last week. Richmond have done the press conference today. Hardwick and Cochrane both up, of course, as is customary, and then they're going to get on the bus and head to Brisbane tonight, train, and then probably turn around and go back again, and then get stuck in tomorrow. So certainly two different parts. I mean, as to when you train and whether that's going to make any difference tomorrow, probably not. But I guess the Tigers are going to get a little look at the Gabba at about similar time to when the game kicks off this time tomorrow night.
Hub life's been different for both these teams. They've both been here for more than 100 days. Geelong's done it a little bit differently to everyone else, though. They're basically taken over Southport Sharks Football Club. There's a hotel connecting to that. Nick, you've been out to Southport a few times. What's the Geelong setup, and sort of how does it differ to all the other Victorian clubs that have been up in Queensland this season?
Yeah, well, the great thing from a Geelong perspective is the fact that their team is based primarily at Southport Sharks, and their ground, or their training facility, I should say, backs onto their accommodation. It's a bit like, I think you mentioned it, Sam, in one of your stories, it's a bit like in the UK cricket, where you see a lot of the hotels actually at the ground, and Geelong players theoretically can just get out of their hotel room, walk down the stairs, in 2 minutes they're on the training track, and that's a huge advantage. You think about the amount of times that they're training and the amount of times that they're not in a bus and they're not in transit. I was up on the Sunshine Coast a few weeks ago, for example, with St Kilda, and I mean, they loved it at Noosa, but when they had their main sessions at Maroochydore, they're getting a bus, and that's 40 to 45 minutes. It could even be an hour, and that's a long transit to do that all the time. And just those little things, guys, I think that helps the Cats. It's a very familiar surrounding, and they haven't had to move. Since they've come to Queensland from Perth about 2 months ago, they've primarily been based at Southport, with a few others at Royal Pines, but primarily their base has been Southport.
Really interested in Chris Scott's comments today. He's had a few subtle digs at the Tigers, probably over the last couple of years, saying that, that they're not as good as the great Hawthorn sides, or even, Collingwood and St Kilda of 10 years ago. But he was asked about those comments today at the grand final press conference, setting maybe a metre from Damien Hardwick, and he had a little bit of a different take, didn't he?
Yeah, he did. He sort of, wouldn't say backtracked a little bit, but he wanted to clarify that he was more talking broadly about how it's very hard for teams to be a dominant powerhouse these days as it was 10 years ago with things like the salary cap.
Hey, Sammy, this sounds like a Geelong supporter trying to hose down what's really going on behind the scenes. This is trying to take the sting out of it a bit.
I think that's probably a fair call. I think Scotty's the master at I guess, turning the narrative. I've got no doubt that Richmond, Reece, surely would be looking at that and going, I tell you what, we might use this as motivation. I know the quotes for a year ago or maybe 7 or 8 months ago, and Chris Scott has sort of clarified them again today. But if you're Richmond, you'd be looking at those, wouldn't you?
Oh, definitely. And I mean, he can clarify. And deep down, Richmond will know that he didn't mean any offence or anything like that. And I think he did make the comments in March, so they're still reasonably fresh. But I think that an opposition club, particularly when it comes to grand finals and there's such small margins between the teams, will use anything. So I would be stunned if, like you said, that comment hadn't been spoken about at some point, or even just written up on the whiteboard. You aren't Hawthorn. Well, hang on. Let's just see about this on the weekend.
Yeah. Now, unless you're a yellow and black person, I think everyone wouldn't mind seeing Gary Ablett say goodbye to the AFL world with a third premiership. What would that mean? I mean, in terms of his standing in the game, he's already right up, sort of, at the very, very top we've seen in generations. What would a final premiership mean, do you think, for his legacy in his career?
Oh, his legacy, it'd be the cherry on the top. I don't think he will be remembered any differently if they win or lose on Saturday night. But I think that it's just the ultimate way to reflect on him. And I think every time people talk about his career 20, 30, 40 years down the track, people will say, and how good was that he finished with a premiership? He's done everything in footy. There's nothing more to do. But in terms of a footy fairy tale, guys, if he was to win a flag, there's not too many that go down quite like that.
Is it our version of The Last Dance with Michael Jordan? Is it as close as we're going to get?
It's got to be, doesn't it? And I mean, it's a great point you make, Wadey, that, I don't think this is going to change anything about his legacy, what he leaves behind or how people are going to remember him. But I think there is a real general sentiment, as you touched on, Sammy, from non-Richmond people, that they just want to see Gary Ablett smile and do it one last time, particularly given the year he's had. I think it's in some ways, it's remarkable that he's even here, because I think when he did leave the hub to go home to be with his family, I think there were some serious concerns at the time. Well, this could be it for Gary. And I mean, even if you go back a step, when he came back to Geelong, there were probably even queries then. Has he still got it? Has he got that edge to be able to perform at a consistent level to A, are Geelong going to make the grand final, and B, is he going to still be firing and a walk-up start? So in every way, it would just be a fairy tale finish.
He was in the gun by some after the qualifying final. My goodness, has he turned the corner. I think his money kicks early against Collingwood probably set up 2 or 3 goals, and then his preliminary final, he just provided some amazing highlights, including a goal from the centre square. So it's been an amazing sort of last fortnight for Gary, and he's really been a critical part as to why they're in the grand final. Now, I think the 2 players everyone's going to have their eyes on, though, are Dustin Martin and Patrick Dangerfield. I think whoever has the best impact out of these 2 match winners will probably go a long way to deciding it. What matchups do we think? Do we think it's probably going to be Dylan Grimes on Danger and Colin Jasnish on Martin? Is that how we think it'll play out?
I think Colin Jasny definitely will take Martin. That's my gut feel. I think that Colin Jasny seems to be the player that the Cats assigned to the most dangerous mid-sized forward, I should say. He went to Charlie Cameron last week against Brisbane, and apart from a couple of early goals where Charlie was up and about, Colin Jasny really did the job for the Cats. And I guess, guys, when you look at how Richmond goes to counter Patrick Dangerfield in attack, it's going to be something that we haven't really seen, because when they played earlier in the season, and when I say earlier in the season, it's only about a month ago now, Geelong forward line was so different. They had so many different players. I think there's about 4 positional changes, and Dangerfield played 50-50 midfield forward. So, yeah, Grimes could be one. Who else do you think, guys?
Yeah, well, the matchup one's an interesting, particularly when it comes to Dustin Martin, because last week in the prelim there was a lot of talk from Port Adelaide. Is Martin going to play predominantly forward, predominantly midfield? And he actually kicked 2 goals. There's both times when he was playing on the ball. So just because he's not playing forward doesn't mean he doesn't become a forward threat. So you really have to man up stoppage. And I think if Port Adelaide had their time again, they would have paid a little bit more attention or respect to him around stoppage, because in a game that was only decided by 1 kick, his 2 goals in the first half were crucial.
Yeah, and I think Port Adelaide had Darcy Byrne-Jones on him, who weighs 17 kilos less. So I don't think Geelong's going to put a lightweight on him, so to speak. So that'll be very, very interesting. Nick, you wrote a really great story this week about Lockie Henderson. Now, this bloke wasn't on an AFL list, in November, December last year. He'd been delisted by the Cats. How has he got back to a grand final where he's probably going to play on Jack Rewald?
Yeah, it's incredible, isn't it, when you think about that Lachie Henderson this time last year was delisted and now he's playing in a grand final. And he wasn't even in the team until round 8. What happened was Geelong's ruck stocks got injured. Reece Stanley was injured. Darcy Fort was injured. And so Mark Blitzars went from full back, centre half back into the ruck. Lachie Henderson gets brought in and he hasn't lost his spot since. And he's been so important to the way that that back line functions now. And he's really good for metres gained. He's got a calming influence. And, I mean, he joined Geelong 5 years ago to win a premiership. His great mate, Zach Toohey, is here as well, chasing that dream. And if you had to ask them a year ago, do you think you guys will be playing in a grand final, let alone in Brisbane, they wouldn't have thought it was possible because, yeah, he was cut last year. Geelong used their last pick in the rookie draft to give him another chance, and he certainly repaid that. It's one of the great stories of grand final week.
Now, no changes is going to be the way in. So, no Jack Stephen. Obviously, did a hamstring after, playing a scratch match after getting dropped for the finals. No Josh Caddy, no Jake Hartz, who played 14 games this year. So, there are some hard luck stories here. Anyone surprised that we're going to see the same 22 go in from the prelim wins?
No, I think that makes sense. Geelong's played really, really well. Richmond as well. Unless there was injuries, you don't want to really risk a winning formula. All their key players are in who are fit. For Geelong, I think there's a couple of guys who are stiff. I mean, Tom Atkins was dropped for the semi-final. He's pretty much played the last 2 years. Bit unlucky there. He would consider himself very unlucky not to be playing. But other than that, I think from a Geelong perspective, they're settled. And Richmond, I mean, again, why would you want to tinker with what they've been able to do? The players are fit. There's a couple of guys who had managed weeks, but that's to be expected in grand final week. And it's amazing to think that we're here after such a compressed season and we've pretty much got 2 teams at full strength.
Nick, you've been based in Brisbane for some time. It is the home of the grand final. What's the atmosphere been like just when you're walking around South Bank and along the river? Are there people in footy jumpers? Is there much talk about the AFL, or are all the local eyes on the NRL grand final on Sunday night?
Yeah, well, it's not like Melbourne, I'll put it that way. It's not like everywhere you go, everyone's talking AFL. But a couple of things that I noticed in the mall, which is just across the road from where I'm staying, there's AFL colours everywhere. They've decked that out. They had the AFL launch here at down at South Bank on Monday. South Bank is in South Brisbane. There was a lot of interest there. A lot of people may not have known what was actually going on, but they stuck around. And I saw a few people reading the AFL stories in the Courier Mail at the end here today at the local cafe. So it is starting to penetrate the market, no doubt. I mean, I think last week walking to the game, the preliminary final, that was a great vibe. The streets outside the Gabba were chock-a-block with people. You couldn't miss it. Reece, it's a contrast from what Adelaide would have been like last week. But no, there's still a fair few around who are interested in footy.
Yeah, definitely. And the only thing that's missing outside the Gabba at the moment, if I can show you down the street, is the line of MCC members sleeping and camping out in their swags. There's no one here. So anyone that's got a ticket already is no doubt going to be pretty excited tomorrow. I mean, I was at one of the local watering holes last night and there was a bloke wandering around with an I Love Richmond T-shirt on. So there's certainly plenty of support around. The merchandise shop around the corner from the Gabba is open and there are people filtering through. So I think AFL fever, as much as it can be in Brisbane, is here.
Reece, you're outside the Gabba. We better let you in shortly. But who wins and who wins the Norm Smith? Nick, we'll get to you in a moment. But Reece, who's going to take home the cup tomorrow night?
Yeah, look, you know what, I've said Richmond all final series, but now I'm starting to think Geelong. I think they've got so much to sort of drive and provide motivation. The Gary Ablett thing, Joel Selwood's never held the cup up as a captain. And I think, importantly, they're in form. I mean, I saw Richmond Port last week. You know, and Richmond can pen this up on the whiteboard if they want, but I think they're lucky to be there. So Geelong have gone bang, bang, couldn't have been more convincing. So I think Cats to win. And I think Paddy Dangerfield for the Norm Smith, and I'm not going to be alone there.
Go have a look at the other Tigers. Thanks, Reece.
Yeah, boys.
Wadey, now, is it worth asking you, have you got your Geelong scarf on or off when you're answering this?
Well, I'm actually going to put my Geelong scarf on, and I'm going to tip Richmond. And I'll tell you why after I tell you why I think the Cats are probably the best team still. I think Geelong's got all the reasons that we've just said. They're in form. They've got all the motivation. They've got all the storylines. Richmond had a taxing game last week. Geelong did too, but I mean, that would take it out of them. But one thing I've stood by all year is I have thought that Richmond is the best team. And I thought if they made it to a grand final after losing that first final to Brisbane, they would win it. And I think the fact that Richmond's finals record, apart from that Collingwood anomaly a couple of years ago, they just know how to win finals. They win finals. They've been on this stage before. Geelong's got a lot of experience, but Richmond's got a lot of grand final experience, and I think that they'll win it. That's why I'm going to pick the Tigers. Unfortunately, from my heavy heart as a Cats fan, that's why I'm picking the Tigers.
Well, I hope you're wrong for your sake. I think it's going to be dependent on the weather. I think if it's a nice dry night, I think the Cats might get up. But if the rain comes and chaos reigns supreme, I think it might be Tiger time. So should be a cracking game for grand final. First time these two sides have met for a grand final since 1967. So it should be an absolute belter. Stay tuned for News Corp for all your grand final coverage.